Up until about a couple weeks ago, the only thing that I actually knew about Roadhouse was that Peter Griffin meme when he goes, Roadhouse.
My God, Roadhouse! If that DVD even touches Roadhouse, I will kill you.
Which, like, for me was like one of the funniest things in the world, and then I decided to go back and check out the original because I knew the remake was coming out, and let me tell you, that film just bleeds 80s coolness, and it still holds up to today. And then I kind of got a little bit more hesitant towards this because I love Doug Liman. I love Jake Gyllenhaal. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. But they're remaking Roadhouse? Really? Then it premiered at South by, got some good buzz. And now I've seen the movie, and this is a damn good time. It's a damn good time. It's a damn shame it's not going in the theaters, but it is going on a streaming on Prime, where like tons of you guys have it. And all I can say right now is, I'm gonna be watching the ever-living shit out of this and the original and having a good-ass time with it. This version of Roadhouse is about an ex-UFC fighter who is named Dalton, who takes the job as a bouncer at a Florida Keys roadhouse, only to discover that this paradise is not all that it seems. Starring the likes of Jake Gyllenhaal, Daniela Melchior, Conor McGregor, Billy Magnuson, Jessica Williams, and Post Malone. Now, again, leading up to this, was kind of excited. I was interested in it because it's Jake Gyllenhaal. I would prefer that he just goes and does like other things in a remake, but you're going to get someone to replace Patrick Swayze and bring back this life and this understanding of what this film and concept is, then Jake Gyllenhaal is a pretty nice pick. And after watching the movie, I really went into this movie just like wanting two things, and that was just damn good action and a damn good time. I didn't need the most groundbreaking script of all time, nor did I need the groundbreaking element of any sort of story, and you're not gonna find that here. This is just a movie that pure in and pure out wants you to be entertained, and that's exactly what it delivers here. And if you go into this movie expecting that, that's what you're gonna get. In fact, I will actually go as far to say, depending who you are, I can see a lot of the newer generation finding this to be 10 times better than the original Roadhouse. I think personally that they're like on par with one another. Nothing ever beats the original for me in most case scenarios, so I don't think it beats it in this way. And partially that is because nothing has 80s coolness bleeding into it nowadays, but even with that said, this new version is fun. And starting with my pros, flat out, the action is what really makes this film pop. And what I mean by that is that I am so damn picky when it comes down to fight sequences and specifically hand-to-hand combat. A lot of Western action films. Very rarely do you go and watch a Western action film and you get greatly shot action scenes that are hand-to-hand combat, as well as greatly edited action scenes nowadays. And you know, I know we have the John Wicks, we have a couple others out here, but it's very hit or miss. A lot of the stuff that we get is stuff that's like The Raid, where it's like, holy shit, they're actually filming this hand to hand, making it so badass. And I have to give credit to Doug Liman. This is probably some of my favorite action that I've seen him shoot so far. Now, obviously, we've seen him go big and bold with like Edge of Tomorrow, which like for me is still my favorite film of his, or even going all the way down to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is more of like a romantic action comedy. But for me, Roadhouse really picks up that steam with the fight scenes. And I can see now why Jake Gyllenhaal signed on for this, as well as the same as Doug Liman, to remake a film like this. Because as much as I enjoy the original isn't groundbreaking for its action sequences. It's groundbreaking for its throat rip-outs and all sorts of things like that. But the way that this film is shot, it really puts you into the visceral nature of these fighting sequences, and specifically its influences on UFC fighting, which I used to actually be a pretty big fan of back in like 2015, 2014. I haven't really caught up on it at all now, but it kind of harkened back to those days of watching UFC with my dad, so I kind of have that nostalgic feeling there. But again, like, the way that they throw a punch and you see the camera kind of swift there, and there's these wide angle lenses where you can really see the whole visceral take of an action scene swinging back and forth, and the entire thing swings and shows you everything. And even when it's edited down, even if they swing it and then for some reason it edits to another shot of it, you never feel like you're losing any momentum in the action scene. Now, I have seen some places where some people weren't a big fan of some of the first-person perspective that they do in here. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Hardcore Henry, if you remember that film. Very underrated, but it's all first-person, goes a little bit too long. This doesn't, it never made me have a headache by any means, but I could see some people actually getting a headache from watching, you know, fist and getting punched in the face and the camera swinging up and down. I thought it actually added to the visceral nature. It's going to be different for each person, but again, the visceral action in this film is the thing that kept me entertained. It made me just go, damn, this is a badass movie. And specifically, like, the final action sequence in here is just great. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, my issues. It might go a little bit too big for its own bridges and specifically what it's trying to do, specifically because the whole concept comes from a bouncer kicking bad people out of a bar. Like, that's the concept, but it goes a little bit bigger than it needs to, and again, we'll talk about that, but the action, every single sequence, no matter how big or how small it gets, it's always entertaining. Like, there's one thing with a boat that I was just cackling and laughing at how, like, outrageous it can get, but I enjoyed it. And going back to what I said is that if you're going to replace Patrick Swayze and put in another actor, well, the actor of this generation is Jake Gyllenhaal, which I think a lot of people forget is just a charming ass guy. And Patrick Swayze alone, every movie you ever watched the guy in, he was just bleeding and oozing charisma and charm. And while Jake Gyllenhaal can definitely play up the creep factor, the weirdo factor, the insane factor, no matter if you're watching Ambulance, Nightcrawler, Mysterio, I mean, this guy goes back and forth, but a majority of the roles that you see him take on, no matter how dramatic, no matter where at, he always has this mysterious coolness vibe to it. And while it's completely different than the mysterious and coolness vibe that you would get in the 80s, Jake Gyllenhaal has it here. And while I'm sure people in the comment section will be giving a ton of other actors that could have played this role, I think Jake nailed it. And I really enjoyed watching him in a film like this. Again, I like my Jake Gyllenhaal doing like Nightcrawler stuff and Prisoners, but I love that he took on this role. I thought it was pretty badass. And I think the film is badass in itself. Conor McGregor, I think there's gonna be a lot of conversation about him. He's just insanely insane in this film. Like, there's not much more to say to it. I didn't expect the best performance from him. I just expected him to kick the shit out of people, and that's what he gets. And he's good. Daniela Melchior, who ever since Suicide Squad, I think she's such a standout. I want to see her in more things. I wish she would get to do more things since then. She's very much a one-sided character in here, or one-note character. She's good for what it is. She's charming. Billy Magnuson always bleeds wildness. Again, kind of the same thing as Daniela, not a lot there. Jessica Williams, kind of the same thing. Wish there was a little bit more. That's where I really come down to this, and I mentioned it before. If you are going to this movie for the deepest story ever, you're going to walk away disappointed. You're going to be able to critique and nitpick the shit out of every single thing happening in here. And you can't go into that for this. You have to know what you're going to watch. And for me, I enjoyed it for what it is. I was never bored. Maybe a couple things could have been taken out here and there, and I would go like way higher on this film. But it's a good, badass time. And that's all I wanted, man. So, jumping in from there, you know, I like Jake Gyllenhaal in this. I like the action. I love how Doug Liman directed and edited the shit out of this movie. But let's get over to my mixed aspects and some of my issues with the film, which overall, biggest con, I think, and a lot of people will have this, and specifically if you're a fan of the original Roadhouse, they kind of steer away from the bouncer element, like, after the midpoint of the film, which, for me, I don't know why they did. I didn't think they needed to. It kind of just goes big for like no reason and like escalating and bringing all these different characters in this small little surrounding area. And I for me at least, I really didn't think it was needed. I think it kind of hurt the pacing just a bit. Where in terms of that, where in the original Roadhouse, majority of the film did take place at the bar, I kind of liked when they weren't at the bar, it was focusing on character development and gave a little bit more to him, whether it was his relationship or some of the townsfolk. And this film starts to do that, but never goes the full mile with it. And that's actually where I wish they would have gone the full mile with it. Kind of dissecting and giving a little bit more to Jessica Williams' character, or Daniela, or even this younger girl who plays a really nice character in here, like, that he has a nice relationship with. There's all these different things. It has a lot of elements of Roadhouse, don't get me wrong. Has the bar, has the bouncers, has him teaching other bouncers, has him, I mean, his introduction scene into this place is excellent. I just really wish they would have focused more in on that. Too big. Other than that, jumping aside from there, I've kind of mentioned it, the characters are a little bit one note. You don't really get to know a lot about them, and I think that was a little bit disappointing. You could have elevated the material just a tad bit there. And some of, like, as a mixed aspect, some of the humor is going to be hit or miss. The humor worked for me. I like the stupid one-liners in this. I can see a lot of you guys rolling your eyes and cringing at some of the stuff. That's just me. Keep that in mind. Roadhouse is exactly what I expected, though, and exactly what I wanted from it. So that's where I say
Roadhouse. Wait, why are you taking the back way home? There are so many turns. Roadhouse
loses the coolness of the original, but gains more violence with its visceral action sequences and an unhinged but calm Jake Gyllenhaal performance. Doug Liman really came to play with the way he decided to edit and shoot these scenes that truly bring you into the fights itself. I'm a fan of this. Again, could have been a lot better in terms of story, but if I got exactly what I expected off the original and they're just remaking the original into their own line to a more modern day setting, then I enjoyed the hell out of this, and I would gladly rewatch this again. Plus, it has a new Post Malone song, and I'm a fan of Posty, so maybe I'm going a little bit higher on this than it is, but overall, I'm going to give Roadhouse a B+. Thank you so much again, guys, for watching this. Make sure to leave your thoughts down below, hit that like, subscribe button, and of course, until next time, stay classy.